Today's lesson is trashing the planet with takeout. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our program. My name is Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And today we're going to talk about takeout food or food delivery, which is actually pretty convenient, especially if you need to stay home during the pandemic. But unfortunately, there is a high price we pay with damage to the environment.
That's right. It's really affecting our planet when we use takeout because when we buy takeout, the food often comes in plastic containers that we throw away immediately after we finish eating. So if the containers aren't disposed of properly, they can end up polluting or trashing our environment. To trash means to destroy something completely. So these containers, if we don't dispose of them correctly, can actually trash our planet, destroy our planet.
I was wondering if everybody's ordering takeout, where is all that trash going? Nobody, of course, is using their own dishware or whatever. That's kind of difficult. You know, they have to bring it to your house first, and then you have to give them the containers or something. It's very inconvenient. So, of course, they have to use disposable containers. So, yeah, where's all that waste going? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Unfortunately, we are trashing the planet with takeout or with takeout waste. And let's find out what this is all about. Let's look at the first part of our lesson, and then we'll discuss it.
Trashing the planet with takeout. In order to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, much of the world has been forced to stay at home. With restaurants closed to indoor dining, people have been turning to food delivery services such as Uber Eats and Food Panda, getting their meals delivered directly to their doors. But while this turn of events has certainly been a boon for these companies, it has not been good news for the environment.
大家好，第一部分我们看到标题 takeout。这个字是名词，指外带食物或是外卖餐馆。例如 Tony has started ordering takeout for his daily meals when he works from home. Tony 在家上班的时候开始点外带当三餐。或是 Stop ordering takeout all the time. It's not healthy. 不要老是吃外带食物，这不健康。接着我们看到单字 pandemic。这个字是名词，指疾病大流行或是流行病。例如In a pandemic, sudden deaths from disease are likely to happen. 在疾病大流行的时候，猝死是很有可能发生的情况。又或者说 Many pandemics have happened throughout human history. 在人类历史中有很多疾病大流行的记录。再来我们看到单字 boon。这个字是名词，指益处或是有用之物。我们可以说 Guide dogs are a boon for the visually impaired. 导盲犬对视障人士来说是有帮助的。或是 The new chocolate museum has been a boon to the tiny town. 这座巧克力博物馆对这个小城镇来说有益处。
And welcome back. So today's lesson is called Trashing the Planet with Takeout. So when we talk about takeout, we're of course referring to those meals that you buy in a restaurant or store and take home to eat. Now we say takeout in America, but in Great Britain they say takeaway. So takeaway and takeout are the same thing. Now in the first sentence here of our lesson it says, in order to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, much of the world has been forced to stay at home. So that's true. During the pandemic, a lot of us stayed at home. The pandemic refers to the COVID-19 in this specific case, which hit last year countries around the world, and it was a serious disease. It continues to be a serious disease. And in order to combat it, in order to get rid of it, to destroy it, people were asked by governments around the world to stay at home.
Indeed. And of course, we wanted to fight or combat the COVID-19 pandemic. And here, of course, we've got the verb to combat something. That's the verb pronunciation to fight against something. We use that if we talk about armies. The Vietnamese combated the Americans in the 1960s during the Vietnam War. But a lot of people will say combat as both the noun and the verb, but technically we're supposed to teach you the verb form combat here. And we wanted to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course affected the whole world, so most of us were forced to stay at home. Not here in Taiwan so much, but with restaurants closed to indoor dining, people have been turning to food delivery services such as Uber Eats and Food Panda, getting their meals delivered directly to their doors. So restaurants were closed to indoor dining. That means, again, they were restricted. For example, some parts of Taipei are closed to automobile traffic. I think a number of streets in Ximending are closed to traffic. They are open to pedestrians only. But in this particular case, restaurants were closed to indoor dining, so people were forced to turn to food delivery services, or you could go pick it up yourself, but I guess that's less convenient than turning to or relying on food delivery services. We mentioned some of the companies here, and the meals would be delivered directly to their doors. But while this turn of events has certainly been a boon for these companies, it has not been good news for the environment. So while this turn of events has been a boon, while here means even though, or it is true that this turn of events has been good for the companies, but still the opposite is true. It's not been good for the environment. So here we've got a turn of events. That just means things change. It wasn't like that before, but then the pandemic came and then things changed.
That's right. So this new development of events has affected the environment, and while it may seem really convenient to be able to order food and have that food delivered to you within half an hour, 40 minutes, and then you don't have to turn on the stove and you can just throw away all of the plastic containers after you eat and not think about it anymore, the reality is that it has affected the environment, our planet, in a very negative way.
Indeed, and of course, the people who collect the trash and who recycle things have seen an increase in their workload, you can imagine. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the second part.
During the second and third quarters of 2020, the top 4 US-based food delivery apps saw a combined increase of $3 billion in revenue compared with the previous year. Even in Taiwan, which did not experience stay-at-home restrictions in 2020, food delivery services saw a huge boost in popularity. Before the pandemic, most Taiwanese food delivery app users were based in Taipei and New Taipei City, but 2020 saw the trend spread to the rest of the country. In the southern city of Tainan, for instance, users of these services increased 20-fold.
第二部分我们看到名词 revenue 指公司的收益或是政府税收，像是 In order to raise revenue, the company doubled the price of a few products. 为了提高营收，这间公司将某些产品的价格翻倍。或是 Tax revenues were down because many people lost their jobs. 因为许多人没了工作，导致政府税收减少。接着我们看到单字 boost， 这个字是名词，指增强、提高或是改善。举例来说 Henrietta began taking Portuguese classes to give her confidence a boost before her visit to Brazil. Henrietta 为了增强她去巴西旅游的信心而开始上葡萄牙语课。或是 The sugar in the candy bar helped give me a boost of energy. 糖果棒里的糖分增强了我的能量。再来我们看到单字 popularity， 这个字是名词，指流行、受欢迎或是普及。例如The popularity of the new video game made its creators very rich. 这个电玩大受欢迎，让它的制作人变得非常有钱。或是 Hector's popularity in the office improved when he started bringing in cookies on Fridays. Hector 开始在周五带饼干来时，就增加了他在办公室的人气。另外，我们来补充这个单字的形容词 popular. P-O-P-U-L-A-R, popular. 意思是受欢迎的或是流行的。 我们可以说 Greg is not the best player on the basketball team, but he is the most popular. Greg 不是篮球队上最棒的球员，但他却是最受欢迎的。
So we're talking about takeaway and how takeaway has become really popular during the pandemic, but it has also affected the environment in a very negative way. So we do know that with all of these people at home ordering takeaway, it has been a boon, or it has brought great benefits to those companies delivering food, such as Uber Eats and Foodpanda. And in fact, we're going to look now at just how beneficial this situation, this turn of events, has been to these companies. During the second and third quarters of 2020, the top 4 US-based food delivery apps saw a combined increase of US $3 billion in revenue compared with the previous year. So we're talking about US-based food delivery apps. The apps are, of course, those applications, the word is short for applications, that you use usually on your smartphone. It's a piece of software that you use on your smartphone. So when you order food through Uber Eats and Foodpanda, you have to order it through the apps. Now, in Taiwan, we usually say APP for apps, but in English, it's more common to say apps as short for applications.
Yeah, if you say APP to an American or a Brit, they're going to be wondering what you mean. But here, of course, APP is the common term. And, of course, this is an application which is used, as Helen said, on your smartphone and your tablet computer, although I don't think I would use this term to talk about a software program on your PC or on your Mac. We use this strictly with mobile devices. So, yes, indeed, they saw a combined increase of $3 billion in revenue compared with the previous year. Revenue, of course, just means income, the amount of money that you make from working or operating a company.
Right. So in the case of restaurants, lost revenue from the pandemic amounted to millions of dollars over the past few months.
Indeed. And also notice here we've got the word saw, which is the past tense of the verb to see. And they're not really looking here, but basically it means they experienced this or they had this happen to them. So they saw a combined increase of $3 billion in revenue compared with the previous year. They experienced that. They had this increase in revenue. Now, even in Taiwan, which did not experience stay-at-home restrictions in 2020, food delivery services saw a huge boost in popularity. Yeah, I was kind of curious about that, Helen. For a time there, it was still legal or allowed to eat in restaurants, but at the same time, those food delivery services just kind of were everywhere. You saw these Uber Eats scooters and Foodpanda scooters all over the place in the streets, and you didn't really see them so much before.
That's right. It wasn't that popular before, I think, because before, mostly young people used these apps. You know, people who worked late and maybe they didn't have time to cook. But with the pandemic, older people, even the elderly population, began to learn how to use these apps to order food to eat at home.
Indeed. So, of course, this offered a lot of job opportunities, mostly for young men to work as couriers for these various food delivery services. The delivery services saw a huge boost in popularity. Again, here, boost just means increase. So even though people could still eat in, these food delivery services were still quite popular. They had an increase in business. Popularity is the degree to which something is popular. So popularity is the noun and popular is the adjective.
Indeed. And these food delivery services saw an increase in popularity during the pandemic because more people started using them. And the noun boost can also be used with words like confidence, ego. So somebody who might need a boost in their confidence might be somebody who's very shy and insecure. So they need a word of encouragement to boost, to have their confidence boosted up.
Now, of course, we live in Taipei here, so we're not quite sure of the situation in other parts of Taiwan. So here it says, before the pandemic, most Taiwanese food delivery app users were based in Taipei and New Taipei City. But in the year 2020, they saw the trend spread to the rest of the country. So I guess it caught on in other parts of the country. I suppose it was even popular in Luodong as well.
Well, before the pandemic, there were certain areas of New Taipei City that didn't really have access to these food delivery services. So if I were at a friend's house, I don't remember where now, but it wasn't in central Taipei, there weren't that many restaurants and options that I could have ordered food from. But all of that has changed during the pandemic because all of these restaurants wanted to maintain their revenue flow, and so they started preparing food for delivery.
Right. I suppose it would be difficult to have a meal delivered if you're up on Yamingshan at Xixingshan or something like that. I think a lot of those services will not go that far. There are limits. But again, the rest of Taiwan saw an increase in these food delivery services. In the southern city of Tainan, for instance, or for example, users of these services increased 20-fold. So, of course, fold means times. So, twofold would mean 2 times the amount. So, 20-fold. That's a big increase for people in Tainan ordering their meatballs.
That's true, and that's a lot of jobs created for these young men or young women who can make some extra money delivering food.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now to the third part and wrap up today's lesson.
However, with this increased business has come an inevitable increase in waste. The takeout industry is notorious for its use of single-use plastic packaging, much of which ends up dumped in the world's oceans.
最后第三部分，我们看到形容词 notorious， 指恶名昭彰的或是声名狼藉的。例如 The area was home to a band of notorious bandits. 那个地区是一帮恶名昭彰盗匪的地盘。或是 Police were often called to the notorious nightclub as fights regularly broke out there. 常有人通报警察到那家恶名昭彰的夜店，因为那里常发生打架事件。
And welcome back. So we've been talking about the benefits of using food delivery apps, how it has benefit precisely these companies that offer the services. However, there is always a dark side to something that seems too good to be true. It's too convenient, it's inexpensive, so what can be wrong with this? Well, there is something wrong, and it has to do with the environment. It says here, however, with this increased business has come an inevitable increase in waste. So the more we are using these food delivery apps, the more garbage we are creating with all of these disposable containers, usually made of plastic.
So we've got this pattern with something, and then you have the result. So with an increase in the flu, for example, we have an increase in children staying home from school. So here, of course, we've got this increased business. That's great. They're making money. They're offering job opportunities for young men. But what comes with that is the inevitable, unavoidable increase in waste. Of course, you're going to get waste, and you're going to get all those empty containers that can only be used once. And the takeout industry is notorious for its use of single-use plastic packaging, much of which ends up dumped in the world's oceans. So, of course, the takeout industry refers to restaurants that deliver food, and you can take it to go with you back to your home or to your office. And if something's notorious, it's very famous, but for a bad reason.
Right. So coal plants are notorious polluters of the environment. They are famous for polluting the environment. So notorious is basically famous for a bad reason or for something that's not good. So the takeout industry is notorious for its single-use plastic packaging because that's usually what they use to package their food. And much of this plastic packaging ends up dumped in the world's oceans. So they're not disposed of properly and they end up polluting the waters.
Yeah, I think here in Taiwan, of course, you'll get plastic lids and then you'll get paper containers. But, of course, they're all going to be thrown out. And I believe the paper containers are coated with a layer of wax. So you can't really recycle them. They're just going to go straight into the incinerator. And then the plastic may end up in the world's oceans. So notice in this sentence, we've got the term of which. And in the first part of the sentence, we were referring to single-use plastic packaging. And then we're saying much of which. So yeah, if you talk about the single-use plastic packaging, then you say, and this packaging ends up dumped in the world's oceans. So of which just represents that subject of the single-use plastic packaging. And if something's dumped, it's just placed in a place. Like in the past, I remember people used to dump their old furniture in the mountainous areas around Taipei. Fortunately, you don't see that so much anymore. But yeah, to dump in this particular case just means to get rid of something.
That's right. And when we get rid of things in the oceans, we can't see what's beneath the ocean, beneath the surface of the water. So often what we can't see, we ignore and we don't see the big problem.
Yep, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So most people aren't too concerned about that. But it's still there and it's causing problems, so we should be concerned. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。新冠肺炎疫情期间，世界各地的外送食物平台大受欢迎，业绩蒸蒸日上。那么课文第二部分就写到说，在2020年的第二季和第三季，总部位于美国的前4大食物外送应用程式，他们的营收跟前一年相比，总共增加了30亿美元。好，文中它用到 saw a combined increase of $3 billion in revenue 来表达。那么动词 see 在这边不是看的意思哦， see 可以用来表达经历、见证，意思就跟 experience 很相近。那么 see 在这个用法当中是及物动词，它的主词通常会是事物。像我们可以说 The industry has seen enormous changes over the past 2 decades. 这个产业在过去20年间经历了重大改变，重大的转变。好，那么另外课文它用到单字 revenue 来指公司的收益，我们来学它的字首字根。好，首先看到 VENT 和 VENUE 这一类的字根，它表示 come 就是来、到来或是出现的意思。那么像 event 活动事件，还有看到 invent 发明，它们其实都跟到来出现是有关的嘛，所以应该很容易看出这个字根的意思。好，在 revenue 这个字当中，它的字首 RE 表示 back 往回，那么 VENUE 表示 come 到来。从字面上来看，它表示 come back 回来，而 revenue 就是用来表达因为投资而在回收的收益，可以拿回来的收益收入。好，我们顺便补充几个有这一类字根的单字哦。第一个是 avenue AVENUE Avenue， 它的字首 A 表示朝向，那么字根 VENUE 表示到来。好，那么 avenue 原本是指通行的道路，它是军事用语，后来则是用来指说通往乡间别墅的道路，因为道路两旁呢常常会有树木林立，于是就衍生出林荫大道、大街的那种意思，那它也可以用来指途径方法。第二个补充的是 advent ADVENT， 它的字首 AD 表示 to 朝向，那么字根 VENT 表示到来，我们从字面上意思看就是说 come to， 那么 advent 它就有问世出现的那种意思哦。第三个补充的是 prevent， 它的字首 PRE 表示事先，在什么之前，那么字根 VENT 表示出现，在某事物出现之前，你就先去干预，先阻止它发生，用这样的方式应该很容易联想到 prevent 它有阻止、防止、制止的意思。第四个补充的是 intervention， 好，它的字首 INTER 表示在什么什么之间，然后字根 VENT 表示出现，最后的 ION 是名词 字尾，那么出现在什么什么之间，在什么什么之中，那就表示是介入其中嘛，所以 intervention 就有干预、介入的意思。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Combat. The government introduced measures to combat terrorism. App. You can teach yourself how to play guitar by using this app. Revenue. The company lost revenue this year because of the lack of tourism. Boost. The country has seen a major boost in tourism since it started advertising its beaches. Popularity. Coffee has grown in popularity in Taiwan over the past few years.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.